When an abandoned satellite drifts back into Earth's range, it begins transmitting voices, human voices reciting memories, stories, and names of people who never lived, from histories that never happened. The first transmission came through a shortwave frequency that hadn't seen use in over 40 years. At first, it was just static, then came the voices. It was 3:17 a.m. at the NASA Deep Signal Array Station in New Mexico when Tech Supervisor Lisa Grant heard it. She was midway through a vending machine coffee, keeping herself awake during another graveyard shift, when the equipment lit up with a signal spike that hadn't occurred since the early 2000s. She frowned, wiped her glasses, and leaned forward. The ID number blinking on her screen matched something old, extremely old. SAT 73B. Impossible, she muttered. SAT 73B had been launched in 1985, part of a Cold War-era experimental broadcast relay program. It was declared lost in 1993 after veering off course during a solar flare. No one had expected to hear from it again, especially not now. But there it was, transmitting. She activated the decryption filters and opened the audio feed. He kissed me under the pepper tree. It was 1952. He smelled of oil and cigarettes. I never told Mama. Lisa froze. The voice was female, soft, mature. It was tinged with nostalgia, pain, and age. But the modulation was strange, too smooth, like synthetic audio shaped by an advanced AI. The voice continued. Then the war came. Harold left for Tokyo. I kept his letter under my pillow, even when he never came back. It was a memory, a detailed one. Lisa pulled out her notebook and jotted everything down. Date, name, setting, voice profile. There was no Harold Thompson listed in any military archive matching the Tokyo campaign in 1952, and no record of a Marjorie Delaney from Ohio matching the speaker's claimed background. In fact, there was no record of any of it. Lisa didn't sleep that night. She emailed her findings to Dr. Henry Baer, her former professor at MIT who now worked in radio signal analysis for the European Space Agency. Within 3 days, the entire feed was under international lockdown. More voices came, hundreds, then thousands. Each one told a deeply personal story, some just seconds long, others lasting 20 minutes. Men and women of all ages spoke in English, Mandarin, Russian, even extinct languages like Latin and Old Norse. Some stories were joyful, others unbearably tragic. But they all shared one impossible trait. None of the people ever existed. Every cross-reference failed. Historians, linguists, archivists, and AI analysts pored over the data. The satellite's original storage capacity had been a mere 20 gigabytes. Now, somehow, it was transmitting over 200 terabytes of voice data, more than could ever have been loaded into its memory banks. And still the stories came. I remember the moons of Urgus. They sang in the cold wind, and we wore crystal masks to keep the voices out. When we found the city beneath the ice, I knew the gods had buried something they wanted forgotten. Father said the sky opened like a wound. He saw the second Earth, upside down and leaking light. Lisa sat with headphones for 16 hours straight, recording, logging, whispering, "What the hell is this?" over and over. Soon, the broadcasts began to include more than voices. Background noises surfaced. Rustling leaves, crackling fires, traffic, animal sounds, musical fragments played on instruments that didn't exist. One track had what analysts claimed was a cicada song, but slowed down to a pitch no insect could produce. Audio engineers attempted reverse spectrogram analysis. That's when the real horror began. Some sounds, when visualized, displayed near-perfect geometric patterns, fractals, golden spirals, tessellations, coded into the background frequencies. Some appeared as spectral faces. A few of the images resembled ancient glyphs, but none could be matched with known human history. When linguists attempted to catalog the stories, they noticed an anomaly. The grammar, syntax, and emotional cadence were too perfect. These weren't random fragments or simulations. They were deliberate transmissions, conversations, messages. Lisa's colleague, Eric Naum, coined the term synthetic ancestry. He believed the satellite wasn't broadcasting data, it was channeling it. But from where? Theories spread fast. Temporal wormholes, a parallel Earth, alien interference, future echo transmissions. Some suggested the satellite had crossed into another dimension and returned carrying psychic residue. Others leaned toward a digital afterlife, an echo archive where the memories of alternate human lives were stored. Things got darker when some of the stories mentioned names they recognized. Lisa heard one that mentioned her grandfather, Thomas Grant, a man who had died before she was born. The voice, a young man, described fighting alongside Thomas in a place called Neural Canyon, a battlefield that never existed. I remember Tom Grant. He was the only one who stayed behind. Said he had a daughter to protect. Lisa dropped the headset. Her grandfather had only ever had one child, her father. It didn't make sense. And yet it felt real. Eric Naum committed suicide a week later. He'd been listening to one particular voice transmission on loop, one from a little girl named Mina, who described waking up in a metal cradle, surrounded by men with silver eyes. And then I heard the song again, the one they said would make me forget. But I remembered, Eric. I remembered you. No one could explain how the message included his name. After his death, the transmissions changed. Now they began to answer questions. Lisa asked aloud during one playback session, "Where are these voices coming from?" The next transmission responded, "Where memory is not bound by time." Another said, "We are the could-have-beens, the almost, the dreams of atoms." One chilling broadcast came through with no modulation, just raw static that slowly resolved into a voice identical to Lisa's own. It told a story she had never lived. Growing up in a coastal town, falling in love with someone named Camille, becoming a poet. The final line was what broke her. "You chose science. I chose dreams. We are both real and neither." Panic spread through the scientific community. Philosophers were invited to closed-door panels with astrophysicists. Religious leaders claimed it was the voice of the dead. The Vatican issued a public statement. "Let us remember that not all who speak are from God." The satellite's orbit decayed rapidly, as if whatever had possessed it was finished with its work. But before its final descent into the atmosphere, one last message came. This time, not a voice. A sound. A pulsating signal, 13 seconds long, repeated 3 times. When run through a sonographic analyzer, it mapped out a 3-dimensional shape, an impossible geometry that defied physics. One mathematician from Switzerland called it a temporal lens, a shape designed not to exist in 3-dimensional space, but across it. Some called it a key. The satellite burned up on re-entry over the Pacific Ocean. But the transmissions didn't stop. Instead, the same signals began coming from other places. Abandoned weather balloons, sunken ships, defunct antennas, even cassette tapes in forgotten drawers. And always voices, stories, lives. One man reported hearing the voice of his dead wife playing from the speaker of a broken toy. Another woman claimed her radio played a song she used to hum to her unborn child, who was miscarried a decade ago. The world began to fracture. Some embraced the phenomenon. Groups formed online, calling themselves the listeners. They believed that every person had another version of themselves that could be heard, if only you found the right frequency. Others warned of what it meant. If other lives were bleeding into ours, what was stopping them from crossing entirely? The governments of the world denied everything. Lisa went dark, disappearing from public life. But years later, an encrypted folder was leaked to the web. It was titled simply, My Voice. Inside were thousands of audio clips. Each one was a different version of her life. In one, she died at 6. In another, she became president. In one, she lived on Mars. In another, she never existed at all. The final clip was silent. No static. No sound. But when analyzed, the frequency data showed an unbroken waveform. Smooth, perfect, uninterrupted. When played back at 50,000% speed, it formed a whisper. A single word. Listen. And the world did. But what they heard next would never be forgotten.